You know what drives me absolutely crazy? Watching people throw money into the stock market like it's a slot machine while they've got credit card debt charging 22% interest just sitting there quietly draining them. It's like trying to fill a bucket with massive holes in the bottom and wondering why you're not getting ahead. Hi, I'm Susan, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, smart investing, and why so many people build wealth completely out of order. If you actually want to understand the right sequence for investing, instead of just chasing whatever sounds exciting, make sure you subscribe. And if this saves you from an expensive mistake, hit the like button. Now, here's something that might shock you. Recent data shows that 1 in 3 Americans doesn't even have an emergency fund. The median emergency savings? About $500. $500. That's less than most people's monthly car payment, and it's actually lower than it was a year ago. Meanwhile, those same people are asking whether they should buy individual stocks or crypto. That's like debating which luxury car to buy when you can't afford to fix the one you already own. The truth is, there is an optimal order for investing your money, and following it can save you tens of thousands of dollars over your lifetime while dramatically speeding up your path to financial independence. But most people ignore the sequence because it's not exciting, it's not flashy, it's not the next hot stock. They want to skip the boring foundation and jump straight to the fun stuff. So today I'm walking you step by step through the exact order you should invest your money so you can maximize returns while minimizing risk. And I promise, a few of these steps might surprise you, especially why your employer match should come before almost everything else, and why a health savings account might be one of the most powerful investment tools people completely overlook. But before we get into the steps, let's talk about why getting this wrong is so expensive. Imagine you're building a house. You wouldn't pick out granite countertops and designer light fixtures if your foundation was cracked and the roof was leaking. Yet that's exactly what people do financially. They invest in trendy ETFs while carrying high-interest debt that's guaranteed to wipe out their gains. Every month you delay paying off a credit card charging 22% interest, that debt is compounding faster than almost any realistic investment return. Every month you ignore your employer's matching contribution, that's free money left on the table. And every month you invest in a taxable account before maxing out tax-advantaged options, you're voluntarily handing extra money to the IRS. So before you invest a single dollar anywhere, you need to build an emergency fund. I know it's not exciting. You'd probably rather hear about the stock that's going to double this year, but if you skip this step, everything else becomes fragile. But here's why this matters more than you think. An emergency fund isn't just about covering unexpected expenses, although that's part of it. It's about creating a psychological safety net that stops you from making terrible financial decisions when life throws you a curveball. When your car breaks down or you get hit with a medical bill, having cash set aside means you don't have to sell investments at the worst possible time or swipe a credit card and dig yourself deeper into debt. The question I always get is, how much should you actually save? You've probably heard the classic advice, 3 to 6 months of living expenses, but that range is so broad, it's almost useless without context. The right number depends on your situation. If you have a stable job with strong benefits, 3 months might be enough. If you're self-employed or working in a volatile industry, you may need 6 months or more. Here's what I suggest for most people. First, save your first $1,000 as fast as possible. That covers most small emergencies and immediately gives you breathing room. Then build up to 1 full month of living expenses. After that, keep going until you reach 3 months. Breaking it into stages makes it far less overwhelming. And here's something most people don't realize. Research from Vanguard found that people with at least $2,000 in emergency savings had financial well-being scores that were 21% higher than those with none. That was the biggest improvement tied to any financial factor they studied. $2,000 isn't life-changing money, but the confidence it creates absolutely is. Once your emergency fund is in place, the next step is critical. Eliminate all high-interest debt before you invest another dollar. And by high interest, I mean anything above roughly 8%, depending on market conditions. Credit card debt is the obvious offender. With average rates above 22%, it grows faster than almost any realistic after-tax investment return. Carrying credit card debt while investing is like trying to run uphill with weights strapped to your ankles. Mathematically, paying off a 22% credit card balance gives you a guaranteed 22% return. You won't find that kind of risk-free return in the stock market. For example, if you have $5,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest and only make minimum payments, you could end up paying nearly $2,800 in interest over 5 years. That's $2,800 that could have been building your future instead of draining it. Every dollar you put toward that debt is essentially earning you a guaranteed 22% return, which is better than even the long-term average returns most legendary investors have achieved. That's powerful. The strategy to eliminate debt efficiently is simple. List every debt you have along with its interest rate and minimum payment. Pay the minimum on all of them, then direct every extra dollar toward the one with the highest interest rate. This is called the debt avalanche method, and mathematically, it saves you the most money. Some people prefer the debt snowball method, where you pay off the smallest balances first to build momentum. And while that can feel motivating, the avalanche method is usually more efficient from a numbers perspective. Now, here's where it gets interesting. There's one major exception to the rule about paying off debt before investing, and it's important enough that it becomes the next step in the optimal order. If your employer offers a retirement plan match, you should contribute enough to get the full match, even before you finish paying off high interest debt. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the math is hard to ignore. An employer match is essentially a guaranteed 100% return on your money up to the matching limit. Even if you're carrying credit card debt at 22%, a 100% immediate return is extremely difficult to pass up. It's like your employer is offering to double your money the moment you contribute. For example, your company might match 50 cents on the dollar up to 6% of your salary. If you earn $50,000 per year, contributing $3,000 could earn you an additional $1,500 from your employer. That's a 50% immediate return before your investments even have time to grow. No traditional investment guarantees that kind of return. The key is to contribute just enough to capture the full match, then redirect any additional money back toward eliminating high-interest debt. Once the debt is gone, you can increase your retirement contributions further. This approach allows you to maximize guaranteed returns while minimizing the amount of time you're paying high interest. One important caveat, though, pay attention to your company's vesting schedule. Some employers require you to stay for a certain number of years before you fully own the matching contributions. If you're planning to leave your job soon, make sure you understand those rules before relying on that match. Even with vesting requirements, the immediate return from an employer match usually makes it worth contributing. That's why this sequence matters so much. An emergency fund, eliminating high-interest debt, and capturing your employer match, that's the financial bedrock. Without those pieces in place, everything else you do is basically building on sand. Once that foundation is solid, we move into what I call the tax optimization zone. And this is where things get really interesting. Most people get distracted by shiny investment ideas and jump straight into taxable brokerage accounts when they should be squeezing every dollar of value out of tax-advantaged accounts first. The next step is maximizing your IRA before increasing contributions beyond the match in your employer's 401k. Here's why. An IRA typically gives you far more control over what you invest in, and often with much lower fees than employer-sponsored plans. Many 401ks offer a limited menu of funds, and some of those funds come with management fees that quietly eat into your returns year after year. With an IRA, you can choose low-cost index funds, or ETFs, that charge just a fraction of a percent in fees instead of the 1 to 2% that's still common in some plans. That difference might sound small, but over decades, it can add up to tens of thousands of dollars. Fees compound just like returns. Unfortunately, they compound against you. For 2025, you can contribute up to $7,000 to an IRA, or $8,000 if you're 50 or older. Once you've maxed that out, then you circle back and increase contributions to your 401k beyond the employer match. But now we hit a more nuanced decision, traditional versus Roth. This choice can save or cost you thousands in taxes over your lifetime. The core question is simple, even if the answer isn't. Do you want to pay taxes now or later? Traditional accounts give you a tax deduction today, lowering your current taxable income, but you'll pay taxes when you withdraw the money in retirement. Roth accounts require you to pay taxes upfront, but qualified withdrawals in retirement are completely tax-free. A general guideline that works for many people is this. If you're in a higher tax bracket now and expect to be in a lower one in retirement, traditional contributions often make sense because you benefit from the deduction today. If you're in a lower tax bracket now but expect to be in a higher one later, Roth accounts can make more sense because you're locking in today's lower tax rate. The challenge is that predicting future tax rates is about as reliable as predicting the weather 3 months in advance. Early in your career, when your income is relatively low, leaning toward Roth contributions often makes sense because you're likely in one of your lowest earning phases. On the other hand, if you're in your peak earning years and sitting in a high tax bracket, traditional contributions can reduce your tax burden today. And if you're unsure, splitting contributions between traditional and Roth accounts creates tax diversification and gives you flexibility later. Now, if you have access to a health savings account, this is where things get really powerful. HSAs are one of the most underused investment tools out there because they offer triple tax advantages. You get a tax deduction when you contribute, your money grows tax-free, and withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are tax-free, even in retirement. That combination is rare. For 2025, you can contribute up to $4,300 with individual coverage or $8,550 $50 for family coverage. The requirement is that you're enrolled in a high deductible health plan, which isn't ideal for everyone. But if you're generally healthy and can handle the higher deductible, an HSA can function almost like a supercharged retirement account. Here's the strategy that makes it especially effective. If possible, pay current medical expenses out of pocket and let your HSA stay invested. Keep your receipts because there's no deadline for reimbursing yourself. You could pay for a medical bill today and reimburse yourself decades later, tax-free, after your investments have grown. After age 65, HSAs become even more flexible. You can withdraw funds for non-medical expenses and simply pay income tax, similar to a traditional IRA. But since healthcare costs in retirement are almost guaranteed, having a pool of tax-free money dedicated to those expenses can protect your retirement plan from one of its biggest risks. The numbers can be impressive. If you max out HSA contributions for 30 years and earn an average 7% annual return, you could accumulate over $400,000 in tax-free funds for medical costs. Considering that the average retired couple may spend more than $300,000 on healthcare throughout retirement, that's a major advantage. After maximizing your HSA, you return to your 401k and increase contributions beyond the employer match. For 2025, the limit is $23,500 or $31,000 if you're 50 or older. At this stage, you're optimizing aggressively from a tax perspective. Between an IRA, HSA, and 401k, you could potentially shield more than $35,000 per year from current taxes if you're under 50, even more with catch-up contributions. That's a substantial amount compounding without annual tax drag. And here's the surprising part. Most people never make it this far. The average American saves around 6% of their income, which usually isn't even enough to fully capture the employer match and max out an IRA, let alone everything else we just talked about. But if you're someone who can actually move through this entire sequence, you're operating at a completely different level. You're already ahead of the vast majority of savers and building a retirement most people only hope for. The beauty of this order is that every step reinforces the next. Your emergency fund keeps you from blowing up your progress when life happens. Eliminating high-interest debt stops the constant drain of interest. Employer matching gives you guaranteed returns, and tax-advantaged accounts allow your money to compound with less interference from the IRS. But we're not finished yet. After you've optimized all those tax-advantaged accounts, then, and only then, do we move to the step most people want to start with: taxable investment accounts. This is the investing playground. You can buy individual stocks, ETFs, even speculate if that's your thing. There are no contribution limits and no early withdrawal penalties. But this flexibility comes with a cost that many people underestimate: taxes. In a taxable account, dividends are taxed. Realized capital gains are taxed. Every time you sell for a profit, the IRS takes a slice. That tax drag quietly slows your growth year after year. Over decades, the difference can be massive. If you invested $10,000 per year for 30 years at a 7% return inside a tax-advantaged account, you could end up with roughly $944,000. In a taxable account, paying taxes along the way, that number could be closer to $700,000. That gap, driven largely by taxes, is enormous. That said, taxable accounts absolutely have their place once you've maxed everything else. They offer total flexibility. Saving for a home down payment in 5 years? A taxable account works. Want to retire early before accessing retirement accounts? Taxable investments can act as a bridge. Planning to pass assets to your kids? Taxable accounts can receive a step-up in basis, potentially reducing capital gains taxes for your heirs. So here it is, the optimal order that most people ignore in their rush to get rich quickly. Build your emergency fund, eliminate high-interest debt, capture the full employer match, max out your IRA, take advantage of an HSA if you qualify, fully fund your 401k, and only then move to taxable investing. Follow this sequence, and you're building real wealth while others are chasing headlines. Your future self won't thank you for picking the hottest stock. She'll thank you for doing the smart, structured, slightly boring things first.